Morning, guys, or afternoon, depending on when you're working on this. Welcome to Turning Point 2. So make sure that you got the new set of notes open, the correct one that we are starting today. Be looking for the Ninja Turtles. That's always your dead giveaway for Turning Point number 2 for the Renaissance. I'm going to make this pretty painless for you, I would hope, just kind of like how we did last time in terms of vocab. Let's just get right after it. So go ahead and go to page 2. So page 2, here you go. Here is all of your new, awesome, fantastic 15 vocabulary words that you are going to know a whole heck of a lot about by the time that we are done with Turning Point 2. Actually, my hope is actually after today. So first being, and I should kind of tell you too, these are out of order, so you need to make sure that you're paying attention and that you're filling these in for the right one. So I'm going to go through these quick, and then we'll start going through the slides. Francesco Petrarch, that's how you say that guy's name. Humanism. Leonardo da Vinci. Renaissance Man. Michelangelo. Raphael. No, not the Ninja Turtles, but that'll be a part of it. The Classics. Filippo Brunelleschi, that's how you say his last name. Pretty awesome name. Perspective. Vernacular. Secular. Johannes Gutenberg. Right there, Johannes Gutenberg. Anatomy, Renaissance, and printing press. So again, these are out of order, so you need to make sure as you're going through to fill these out that you're filling out the right one, the correct ones for each. Would that be a row or column? That's a row going across. Remember, you're responsible for typing in definition, the part of speech, and grabbing the image. And no, you're not doing your own definitions and all that. You're simply going off of the slideshow that I'm about to show you. Okay. And obviously, no, you can't have access to these slides. You just need to listen to me like you normally would in class and get them typed in. So let's go. The first one would be Renaissance, of course. It is second from the bottom, so go ahead and click down here. And switch over to the slideshow. Hopefully it'll load. There we go. Looking at the turtles, of course. Biggest thing that everybody remembers for the Renaissance is, the turtles. So the people that invented the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, quick side note, they were looking for character names for their turtles that they were coming up with for their new comic book. And for some odd, strange, not really known reason, they're like, let's choose some Renaissance characters. So hence Michelangelo, Leonardo, Donatello, which is one of the guys we don't necessarily talk about, and Raphael, who we do talk about. Fun fact. So again, go ahead and click down at the bottom, second from the bottom, where it says Renaissance definition, and away we go.
Well, let's go to the thought bubble. Italy was primed for Renaissance for exactly one reason: money. A society has to be super rich to support artists and elaborate building projects and to feed scholars who translate and comment on thousand-year-old documents, and the Italian city-states were very wealthy for two reasons. First, many city-states were mini industrial powerhouses, each specializing in a particular industrial product, like Florence made cloth, Milan made arms. Second, the cities of Venice and Genoa got stinking rich from trade. Genoa turned out a fair number of top-notch sailors, like, for instance, Christopher Columbus, but the Venetians became the richest city-state of all. As you'll remember from the Crusades, the Venetians were expert sailors, shipbuilders, and merchants, and as you'll remember from our discussions of Indian Ocean trade, they also had figured out ways to trade with Islamic empires, including the biggest economic power in the region, the Ottomans. Without trading with the Islamic world, especially in pepper, Venice couldn't have afforded all those painters, nor would they have had money to pay for the incredibly fancy clothes they put on to pose for their fancy portraits. The clothes, the paint, the painters, enough food to get a double chin, all of that was paid for with money from trade with the Ottomans. I know I talk a lot about trade, but that's because it's so incredibly awesome, and it really does bind the world together. And while trade can lead to conflicts, on balance, it has been responsible for more peaceful contacts than violent ones, because, death is bad for business. This was certainly the case in the Eastern Mediterranean, where the periods of trade-based diplomacy were longer and more frequent than periods of war, even though all we ever talk about is war because it's very dramatic, which is why my brother Hank's favorite video game is called Assassin's Creed, not some Venetian guy's negotiated trade treaty. Thanks, Thought Bubble.
So, real quick, so for the Renaissance, again, what you're supposed to be typing in, So again, obviously, there's your vocab word for the Renaissance. There's your part of speech. Renaissance is a proper noun. Your definition, obviously, is over here. Okay, and then when you're doing an image search, just simply go to Google Images and search rebirth, and you'll find what you need. So the Renaissance, we are looking time period wise right after the Black Death. Time frame wise is pretty wide, much wider than we saw for the Black Death, 1300s to 1500s. Again, the big emphasis for what Renaissance is that it's a rebirth. So a lot of these fields of study that were being kind of looked at and investigated were things that had been studied and investigated before, mostly by the ancient Greeks and Romans, but now are kind of being elaborated on, during this period of the Renaissance. This whole movement of the Renaissance begins in Italy. Okay, it's a really, really important country in this whole process, and huge advancements in a variety of different fields during the Renaissance. So there's your first one. Everybody say the Renaissance. Renaissance. Good job. Okay. The second one, again, make sure you're on the right line because they're out of order, so you got to pay attention, would be humanism. Okay, so humanism, what is that all about? Why is Homer looking like a hippie? Well, humanism is kind of a hippie sort of mantra. It's kind of a hippie sort of mentality. It is the gasoline, basically, that made the Renaissance go. So the things to remember for humanism is it was kind of this new way of thinking. It was a new way of system of thought. And what humanism did was they really wanted to place the importance on human beings. So they didn't want to be concerned with supernatural matters. So when you see supernatural matters, we're talking like, being concerned with the church and am I doing all these sacraments correctly? Am I doing all these things right? So I'm avoid going to the bad place, all that sort of stuff. But that was the thing is humanism wanted the individuals to focus on themselves, be as smart as you can be, as you could possibly be as creative as you possibly could be, demonstrate your artistic abilities the best that you possibly could, rather than being like, well, am I doing enough things to be able to go into heaven, or am I going to be hanging out with Satan for the rest of eternity? This is the intellectual movement that's really at the heart of the Renaissance. And the easiest way I always kind of make the analogy when we start going through this for humanism, and that bar will go away in a second, is it is the big time gasoline that makes the Renaissance go. It is the mindset that makes this Renaissance go. Any person that was a big contributor to the Renaissance era was humanistic in some way, shape, or form, because humanists really focused on, I'm not going to move it over there because I don't want that bar to show, but focused on education. So think about the Black Death chapter, right? Turning point 1 we just got through. Bubba J, what vocab word was that? Uneducated. Good job. Yeah, uneducated. So now the change is becoming that, we're not going to be Bubba J's. We're not going to be easily, manipulated into thinking this, and that. We're going to be smart, and we're going to take advantage of those things and be as smart as we possibly can be. So there you go for humanism. Again, make sure you're writing that on the right row because they all are out of order if you don't understand that yet. Okay, let's see if I can put my face on Homer's body. Nice, I did it. Okay, the next one would be the printing press. And again, here's your part of speech. The definition is going to be over here, and you need to do an image search for the printing press.
Everybody knows the story of Gutenberg and his printing press. Nonetheless, it's still one of the greatest stories in the history of invention.
I believe that the printing press was our species' intellectual Big Bang. Knowledge, up to that point, was the property only of a small number of people, whether it be royalty or a religious order. And the ability to produce books is severely limited because to produce a book, a person has to sit with one book and painstakingly copy it into a second version.
They were fantastically expensive. They took a really long time to make. They were prone to transcription errors that would propagate from volume to volume. And these limiting factors kept them from being distributed to people. Gutenberg saw an opportunity. He knew it was possible to print in a new way that would make it less expensive. He saw this as a tremendous money-making opportunity.
Gutenberg has the idea for movable type.
Movable type, where you didn't have to make new ones for each page. You could just arrange the letters, and then you could print as many pages as you want.
Once movable type came into play and the production costs went down, knowledge flourished.
the ability to have access to this world of knowledge was absolutely transformational for Europe. So you had this huge boom in literacy, and with the awareness that there was such a thing as a book, became curiosity about what was going on around the world. If you look at the first couple of hundred years of what today we call literature, it wasn't religious like the Bible. Almost all of it was travel literature. People wanted to explore it. They couldn't personally leave their homes. They wanted to explore through knowledge. The notion of pressing blocks against paper to make images or text had been around and really come from China, but no one had ever turned it into a real manufacturing process. That's the difference. It's that he could make thousands of them and make them quickly and efficiently.
It plants the seed of the notion that you can get machines to do what people used to do.
You start to see the end of the artisan era and the beginning of the manufacturing era. And you think about the impact that had, it's really hard to underestimate it. Gutenberg's printing press was so revolutionary. His name certainly lives on as one of the great inventors of human history.
So for the printing press, so invented by Johannes Gutenberg, that's how you say his name. Move my picture out of the way here. 1440 is your official time frame for the printing press to be made. Basically, this is the internet of its day. Of its age. It's the email of its age. It is the most groundbreaking invention that human history can make the argument has ever seen. Basically, what it was a copy machine meets a typewriter, old school style typewriter. I'm going to say typewriter, and you guys will be like, what's a typewriter? Like, think about it, like the thing where you hit the keys, and then the letter hits the paper, and actually, like you hit it, and then it, like, that's what the printing press was. And now what that is going to do is it is a game changer, mainly because of the fact that now the amount of books that are going to be able to be made throughout Europe is going to, like, skyrocketing is putting it lightly. It is going to explode. Now more books are going to be in the hands of more people than ever before. And I know you guys are like, I hate books. I don't even know how to read. Like, why do I care? But think about it in the sense of like the 1400s. When the only people that ever had literature in their hands before were kings, the lords, the church, that's it. Now you have books in your hand, and books create knowledge, and knowledge creates growth. The more you know. So that is the printing press. Everybody say printing press. Printing press. Nice job, guys. Okay, and then you get your part of speech up here and all that. Okay. The next would be perspective. So perspective is a art technique. There's no video for this, so I can just kind of ramble at you about it. This is a noun because it's a thing. It's a style of painting. And this was really popular during the Renaissance era. It's this technique of basically making your art look three-dimensional, looking like this one, okay, which is one of the pieces of artwork we're going to kind of look at more specifically as this chapter goes on, okay? So perspective, again, it's an artist technique. Basically, it was used to be able to make paintings look three-dimensional. It's the idea that you kind of use these linear lines. You see these lines coming down, using kind of math ideas to kind of realistically show how things truly look in real life. What you'll recognize is that before the Renaissance, art was pretty terrible. Art was very unrealistic looking. It looked very cartoon-ish. It looked out of proportion. Things just didn't look right in pre-Renaissance art, but perspective makes art much more realistic looking and much more 3D. That's the big thing for that. And if you search for your image search, if you search perspective art in Google Images, you're going to find a lot of stuff, a lot of pictures to be able to use. Everybody say perspective. Perspective. Nice job, guys. Very good. Okay. Renaissance, man. This one is an interesting one, and I'll explain the baseball analogy once this video is done going through.
Playing in the major leagues is something that every kid that plays baseball dreams about doing one day. It is America's pastime. It is America's sport.
Oops. Back it up. Sorry.
Something that every it's what we try to strive to get to, and the fact that I'm living proof that anybody can do it, it's awesome. And if there's something I could tell kids, it's like, yeah, I mean, don't let anyone deter you and tell you can't do it, because I'm living proof that an average talented guy can make it happen. I've always had 3 goals as far as what my legacy, what I want to leave behind. I never wanted to repeat a level in the professional game until I made it to the big leagues. I want my teammates and my coaches to say I played the game the right way. And lastly, I want to walk away when I'm ready to. I don't want them to have to show me the door. I've spent over 10 years in the major leagues, so for me that's less than 1% of all major league players get an opportunity to do that. So I've been very fortunate to consider myself a 10-year plus major leaguer. Once the game starts, I completely shift gears and I'm a completely different person when I get between the lines. I play the game hard. I don't screw around. I try to play and respect the game as much as I can and play as hard as I can. As soon as you get in the batter's box, everything just kind of, you forget about it. You're not worried about being nervous. You're just focused on what you have to do. Take a deep breath and find your toe hold and let's go. Me against you, and you're not nervous anymore. You're focused on what you have to do. The challenge of playing baseball is obviously what keeps me going. It's an imperfect game, and you try and play it perfectly. It's impossible. My dad's sweetheart gun growing up was the when he went on an important contest, the gun he always took. So when I got called to ask if I wanted to be a part of Team Weatherby, didn't have to say much more. Being an outdoorsman, the guy that loves to hunt, loves to shoot, and I heard the name Weatherby, I'm like, yeah, I'm in. The season's such a long grind. When it's over, I just like catching up with my wife and kids. I like being at home. I just like hanging out and not having a lot to do. I try to do the best I can just to turn it off and leave everything that's happened at the field. When I get home, it's time for me to be a dad, husband, cook, chef, go throw stuff on the grill. For me, that's an escape. I'm Team Weatherby member Willie Bloomquist, and I'm a 10-year major leaguer.
Okay, so the Willie Bloomquist thing. So he actually was a local guy. Grew up in Port Orchard, Washington, and he played for the Mariners 2 different times, 2 different tenures. Anyway, he was kind of a jack of all trades in terms of, and that's a term for kind of did it all for his defensive positioning. So he played every single position on the field at some point in a major league game. And that's a really rare thing to do. Most times, professional athletes are very specific to a specific position, specific, place on the field. For baseball, for example. So that's a really rare thing to be able to do, to be able to be pretty dang good at a variety of different things. It's exactly what a Renaissance man is. A Renaissance man, which is a noun, you're talented in many different areas of knowledge, right? So the Da Vinci's of this era, Renaissance men. The Michelangelos of this era, Renaissance men. They were sculptors, they were painters, they were engineers, they were architects, they were astronomers. They did all of these different things. They were interested in flying. Like all of these different things makes them a Renaissance man because they're so talented in a variety of different things. So you're talented at many different academic subjects. So if you're really good at math, but you're trash at language arts and all the other subjects, but you're only really good at math, not really a Renaissance man. But if you're really good at math, you're really good at LA9, you're really good at world studies, you're really good at this, you're really good at that, you could be deemed, a Renaissance man, or it's 2020, so Renaissance woman. Okay, you're talented at a variety of different things. Okay, that's Renaissance man. Anatomy is a pretty easy one to understand. It is the study of the human body.
He turns his insatiable curiosity to the study of life's greatest work of art, the human body.
He was interested in anatomy from an early age, probably from his time in Verrocchio's workshop, where artists in Florence were encouraged either to perform dissections, autopsies at a medical school, for example, or they were encouraged, if not to perform them, then at least to observe them.
Always fascinated with the human body, he studies the mysteries of death at the hospitals of Santa Maria Novella.
Dicono che abbiate vissuto 100 anni. È vero?
100 anni? Non è così difficile. Non sento dolori. Sono stanco. Tanto stanco.
He's interested in the way that the pieces of the human body, which is, after all, a very intricate mechanism, the way the pieces of this mechanism fit together.
Within hours of the old man's death, Da Vinci descends into the cavernous morgue to dismantle nature's ultimate machine.
We might be surprised that Leonardo's dissection of human corpses wasn't frowned on by the church of his time. That seems, though, to be more of a modern concept and modern prescription.
Here, he will make an astonishing discovery, centuries ahead of its time.
I conducted an autopsy in order to determine the cause of such a peaceful death, and found that it was caused by the failure of blood flowing into the artery that feeds the heart and other lower members, which I found withered and shrunk.
In 1507, Leonardo makes history's first description of arteriosclerosis by comparing the circulatory system of the elderly man with that of a child's.
And we have to try to imagine 500 years ago what it would have been like to work on an autopsy without the benefit of good lighting or good preservation of the material. The smell must have been awful.
Under challenging conditions, Leonardo invents an entirely new way of seeing. Later, his cross-sections and exploded diagrams will profoundly influence the modern method of visualizing anatomy and machinery. His code, like the man himself, becomes mature. Experimentation continues to be the primary engine in his effort to achieve what no one else could.
I am inspired by the urgency of doing. Knowing is not enough. We must act on it. Being willing is not enough. We must do.
So for anatomy, again, kind of over the top sort of thing there, but it is the focus on, let me put my head right on this guy's dead body. Move me. The human body, how it works, how it functions, the look of it, the structure of it, the internal, ins and outs of how it kind of all functions. Obviously, anatomy, it's a noun, is still studied today, more kind of in the science realm of the medical realm of how the human body works and functions and all of that. But this was a major, major focus during the Renaissance. And a lot of your kind of focus on anatomy can actually be seen during the Renaissance, actually in some artwork, not some, and a good amount of artwork that is done, whether that be paintings or mostly sculpting, which we'll take a look at as well. So anatomy, science of the human body. Everybody say anatomy. Anatomy. Great job, guys. Okay. The classics. I can kind of skip through this video and kind of just talk to you about it. Make it go a little bit quicker. Whoops. So what the classics are, let me get that up there for you. Perfect. Basically, just think old books. So the classics, what they are focusing on. So these were basically very, very highly smart, highly intellectual literary works that were done by the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans. In these books, they really focused on a variety of different topics. The Greeks and the Romans, which came before the Black Death, were super beyond their time, for sure. They focused on things like philosophy, drama, history, science, politics, all that. And the humanists, what they did was they really wanted to use these books, these old books called the classics, for their own kind of improvement in their own ability to kind of make their own, discoveries along the way. Okay, so a quick little video for that while you type in this definition, your image search, and your part of speech.
Temple Classics is a department that's dedicated to teaching and learning about the ancient Greek and Roman worlds.
The first incarnations of virtually every major institution in Western culture: theater, politics, democracy, roads, aqueducts, you name it, it was born in those two cultures.
And so whatever you're interested in, you can find that Greeks and Romans were writing about it. They were writing about love, death, sports, medicine, everything you're interested in. You can find the origins of your interests within Greco-Roman antiquity.
Classics allows you to study everything and anything. We study politics, philosophy, literature, art, history, language. And really it gives you a holistic look at one period of time, which you can then transpose into anything, any type of career that you'd like to study.
It's a subject which attracts some of the best students that you'll find at Temple, students who work hard, ask questions, and don't take things for granted.
Something that's been really important to me while being in the classics department is sort of the commitment to learning. This is an environment that's open to different opinions, and something I've really enjoyed about the professors here specifically is that they are always open to student opinions, and they're really interested in what we have to say.
We're pretty small for a department at Temple, and that's
that's the only reason I didn't really want to show the full video is it's a department there in Temple University in Philadelphia, but they basically focus on all of these things for the classics, these ancient Greek and Roman literary works. So again, a lot of the Renaissance thinkers of the day, of that time period, really focused on the classics. Okay, stop video along the way if you need to at all. Get these typed in. The next one, love it. I'm going to play the video for you first. How you pronounce that is vernacular.
Do you understand the
Great flick. Probably can't even tell me the movie.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Just nods. It's great. Okay. So for vernacular, it's a very simple understanding. Oh, wow, man. Nice. It's better. Okay. It is simply the language that's spoken by ordinary people in a certain country or a certain region or any certain place. You're going to see this terminology of vernacular come up multiple times when we go through a bunch of our readings. Vernacular, just a fancy way to say like more common language. Remember what the vocab word for Turning Point 1, that was all about, the very complicated language that was super hard to understand. What was that? Latin. Good job. Yeah, it was Latin. So now the shift during the Renaissance now is that they are going to be able to have books that are available in the more understandable vernacular for kind of the normal, common, everyday person. Okay? So again, think.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Okay, for vernacular. Got it? Vernacular, language spoken by an ordinary people in a region, place, anything like that. Easy. Okay. Secular, actually, I'll play this for you as well. You're not tied to a specific religion. So it's an adjective, it's a descriptive word. And this video clip, well, I'll let it play for a little bit.
There are roughly 4,200 religions in the world today, not to mention another 41,000 denominations of Christianity alone. This makes it kind of difficult to narrow down the belief system that's right for you. If you're a slightly wayward hipster who has a wry sense of humor, you might want to consider Pastafarianism. Not to be confused with the Rastafarians, who are also a peaceful bunch, the Pastafarians have an intricate belief system surrounding their god, who just happens to be a flying spaghetti monster. Yes, their supreme creator is literally a flying cluster of tangled noodles with meatball eyes. Flying Spaghetti Monster made the whole universe and all its components in only 4 days, all the while drinking intensely. He also made pirates the chosen ones because they live such a badass lifestyle. Pastafarians enjoy the same privileges of other devout religious folk who follow the rules. They too will ascend to heaven after their life here on Earth. Their paradise is a wild land with logger volcanoes and many strippers. The individuals who disregard and spurn the Flying Spaghetti Monster go to hell. The overall...
So, yeah, this is a real religion. Pastafarianism, the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. They wear you make noodles, the colander on your head as traditional headgear. Yeah, so that's a real religion. I kid you not. But how is it tied into secular? Well, secular basically means you don't have to be a specific religion. There's no mandated forced religion on you that you need to be. In the United States, obviously, we have a very secular society. If you want to be Christian, you want to be Catholic, you want to be Jewish, you want to be Islamic, you want to be a Wiccan, you want to be a Quaker, you want to be a Protestant, you want to be a Pastafarian, is that right? You can do it. The United States says there's no mandated religion that you need to be. This is a very big change from what we saw in the Black Death era, where basically it was you went with the Roman Catholic Church or that was it. Like you didn't not go against them, if that makes sense. Now you have a lot of these Renaissance writers that are kind of thinking outside of the box and thinking maybe we shouldn't have any sort of mandated religion that tells us specifically what we need to believe in or think or in terms of our kind of spiritual beliefs. So that is secular. It's Pastafarianism. Okay. Then we get into our really important people. The first one, of course, being the very famous Leonardo da Vinci.
Leonardo was among the most important painters of the Italian Renaissance and the father of the High Renaissance style.
Leonardo da Vinci was born on April 15, 1452, in Vinci, Italy. By age 14, he was apprenticing under the famous artist Verrocchio.
One of Leonardo's greatest contributions to painting was his introduction of the idea of sfumato, which essentially means smoky, and is a way of producing atmospheric perspective in paintings.
Da Vinci became a master artist in the Guild of St. Luke at age 20, and in 1482 moved to Milan and began taking commissions from wealthy patrons.
One of the earliest complete works he did was the Annunciation, which has that spectacular background that he had perfected.
The most famous work and the most important one that Leonardo produced while in Milan was his Last Supper for the refectory of the Church of Santa Maria della Grazia.
He left Milan in 1499 and traveled throughout Italy, working for a number of different patrons.
Leonardo's 1503 commission for the Battle of Anghiari represented a high point in his life. It was a vast project, a fresco painting that would have decorated one wall of the Grand Council chamber in the Palazzo Vecchio in Florence. And Michelangelo was to paint the other wall facing. The project never came to be.
During the early 1500s, Da Vinci also began painting the Mona Lisa.
The Mona Lisa is one of Leonardo's most important works. It's today one of the world's most famous paintings.
I can't think of any other work that has so consistently fascinated people.
Leonardo da Vinci was a true Renaissance man. He's well known as a great artist, but in fact, he also made great contributions to foundations of science.
He engaged in projects like designs to reroute rivers, urban planning, the creation of pedestrian streets in the centers of cities, all designed to cut down on the chaos of life around him.
Leonardo went to Rome to work for Pope Leo X in 1513, and he stayed about 3 years.
While there, he practiced dissections and laid the foundations for the study of human anatomy.
He spent his final years in the employ of the King of France, producing works for him as well as for other members of the French nobility.
Leonardo da Vinci died on May 2nd, 1519 in Ambrose, France. Such was his stature that it was said he died in the arms of the French king.
Leonardo is deservedly one of history's most famous painters. As the founder of the High Renaissance style, as one of the greatest naturalists who ever lived, he is someone who we continue to admire today.
Okay, so for Leonardo da Vinci, again, it is a proper noun. I don't know if I said that before. So it's proper noun because he is a person. Okay, when you do your image search for the very, very famous Mona Lisa. He did it all. I mean, it's almost indescribable how much he did. Unbelievably famous painter, sculptor, architect, musician, engineer, mathematician, scientist. He is the truest of true Renaissance men. And his two most famous works that you are going to have to remember, the Mona Lisa, of course, at the Louvre today, and The Last Supper, okay, which we'll analyze The Last Supper when we go through a bunch of really important artwork for the Renaissance. So for Da Vinci, the truest of true Renaissance men, there's probably never been another genius on this planet that's been as unbelievable as he was with his gifts, for sure. Okay, everybody say Da Vinci. Da Vinci. Nice job, guys. A little mumbled, but good job. The next of the bunch would be Michelangelo, no slouch himself. When you do your image search, if you search the Sistine, that's how you say that, chapel, that's Michelangelo's one of his most major accomplishments and feats. It's unbelievable. And again, it is a proper noun. So here you go for Michelangelo.
Illustrating history. Rumor has it that once in 1515 in Rome, as an Italian sculptor finished the sculpture of Moses, he stroked the statue's knee with a hammer and said, "Parla!" He was so in awe of the perfection of his own work that to be alive, it only had to speak. This event really describes the personality of this sculptor, who was one of the most important artists of the Renaissance era, and of all history, Michelangelo Buonarroti. He was born in Caprese near Florence in 1475, and was the son of a noble Florentine, who expected his son to grow up to be a lawyer or politician. But Michelangelo was more interested in the arts, so he started as an apprentice at one of the most prestigious studios in Florence, which belonged to Domenico Ghirlandaio. As an apprentice, Michelangelo soon began to exceed his master. At the age of 15, he was called to be a part of Lorenzo de' Medici's court of artists. Lorenzo was a great leader in the city, and an art enthusiast. There, Michelangelo saw a great collection of antique pieces, which awakened his calling to sculpture, and his desire to surpass the great artists from the past. In Rome, at the age of 23, Michelangelo finished the sculpture Pietà, which shows the Virgin Mary holding the dead body of Jesus Christ. Michelangelo changed the proportions to make the piece lighter. He sculpted Mary proportionally bigger than Jesus, and made her look younger, even though she was over 50 years old when her son died. According to Michelangelo, that way he could highlight the beauty of Mary's purity. He was so proud and fascinated with his own work that he made it a point to carve the inscription made by Michelangelo Buonarroti of Florence on the sash across the statue's shoulder. Back in Florence, Michelangelo sculpted a giant David from a piece of marble 16 feet high. Because of its beauty and expressiveness, it was placed by the entrance of the city hall, so everyone could appreciate it. For his stellar reputation, Michelangelo was called by Pope Julius II to go to Rome and paint the Sistine Chapel in the Vatican. Michelangelo isolated himself in the chapel and worked intensely from 1508 to 1512. When it was done, it was so widely admired that Michelangelo, the greatest sculptor in the world, was also acclaimed a genius painter. At the age of 88, Michelangelo was still producing outstanding pieces, including work he conceived as an architect. All of his work is as admirable as a massive dome of St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican, which still stands majestic in the skyline of the Eternal City, Rome.
So sorry, that goes very fast, but let me get this out of the way here. For Michelangelo, again, no slouch himself at all. Obviously, for comparing him to Da Vinci, it's a tough sell for sure. But again, proper now, because it's a person. But again, he did it all. And just like Da Vinci before him, Italian, because all this starts in Italy. Sculptor. The Pieta is by far, his biggest contribution in terms of the sculpting game, but also the David, which we'll look at as well. Painter. The Sistine Chapel is unbelievable. Architect, poet, again, very true Renaissance man. His three biggest claims to fame, and you could make the argument, maybe there's more, the Sistine Chapel, the Pieta, that's how you pronounce that, and of course, the David. So that is Michelangelo, the Orange Ninja Turtle. Okay. Last couple of folks. This fella would be Johannes Gutenberg, is how you pronounce it, and enjoy the video.
Storybots. Storybots presents Great Innovator. In the days of castles, kings, and knights, a book was something rare. It was made by hand for wealthy folk, with lots of gold to spare. Till a clever man named Gutenberg said, "That's a shame indeed. If making books was quick and cheap, then everyone could read." So he launched a secret project in the workshop where he'd hide, and townsfolk often stopped to ask, "What's going on inside?" Well, Gutenberg was hard at work with all his expertise. He invented little molds to make his metal ABCs. He'd arrange them in a block of type and smear it all with ink, then press it down on paper.
Well, it's as easy as you think.
For years he toiled and tinkered, till at last he found success. He unveiled his great invention.
Look, I've made the printing press.
He printed up some school books, which were nice but just a start. But then he made his famous Bible, which were splendid works of art.
Whoa.
The printing press soon changed the world. Now everyone had books. Not only kings and noblemen, but farmers, maids, and clerks. So today, whenever you enjoy a book or magazine, just remember that it started out with Gutenberg's machine.
You're welcome. So for Johannes Gutenberg, he was a German blacksmith. Basically, he kind of did the creation of the printing press kind of in secret, not really a lot of people knowing what was actually going on. But again, his introduction of the printing press is a major game changer in terms of being able to publish literature, publishing books, and turn basically printing into a much cheaper process, by inventing this machine rather than everybody having to, copy things by hand and it taking forever and being super expensive. Literacy rates are going to skyrocket. The variety of books that are out there are going to skyrocket. People's knowledge is going to skyrocket. All of that, again, because of Johannes Gutenberg. I know you guys are thinking, I hate reading. I don't really care. This is the internet of its age. It's the email of its age. All of that. Okay. Johannes Gutenberg. Okay. Francesco Petrarch, let me put my picture right on him. This guy is a goofball. You can tell by the picture. He is a very interesting fella. He, again, is a proper noun. If you search Petrarch for your image, you'll probably see this one where he's got all the, I don't even know, branches or whatever this is in his hair. He was an Italian. Surprising. That's sarcasm. It's not surprising. He is considered the father of humanism. He is considered the first humanist that really put these ideas about the focus on the human body and the human ability to be as smart as you can be, to be as artistic as you could possibly be, into the atmosphere. So everybody, would start kind of seeing the ways that he was kind of seeing the world. Again, very hippie-like for sure. His biggest ones, his biggest contributions is his love poetry. His love poetry is seen as being top notch, as being the William Shakespeare in the love poetry game. His most famous love poems were to a woman named Laura. Now, I took away the video over here, but there used to be a video that I'd show about Laura. There's two stories about her. The first story of Laura is that she was married to somebody else and didn't like Petrarch, probably because he looked like he just got in a fight with some trees or something. And so he wrote these kind of as a stalker, kind of as a scorned boyfriend sort of deal. The other story about Laura is that she really didn't exist and she was a figment of his imagination. So either way, a little cuckoo for Mr. Francesco Petrarch is how you say his last name. Petrarch. Again, proper noun because it is a person, of course. Okay? Father of humanism. That's the biggest thing you need to remember for Francesco Petrarch. Okay? Raphael, don't know video for him because I think the picture does it justice. I'll get my mug out of the way. So Raphael, he, again, is considered to be one of the great Renaissance thinkers of his era. Italian painter, architect. So again, you can kind of make the claim that he is a Renaissance man for sure. But his biggest claim to fame is this beautiful work of art, which is known as the School of Athens. The School of Athens is legit. It is considered to be one of the most three-dimensional, one of the most three-dimensional, depth-defying portraits of its era, of its time. It is seen as being kind of an ode to the importance of education for the School of Athens. In this portrait, you don't see any heavenly figures. You don't see any biblical characters. You don't see any biblical symbols of any kind. You just see people. And these people in here are actually some of the brightest minds that the world has ever known. People like Aristotle, Plato, Euclid, just a variety of very, very intellectually smart, gifted people from the history of humanity. Raphael actually did put himself in his own portrait of the School of Athens. He is right there, hanging out, like Where's Waldo style. But this portrait will really get into like the importance behind it. It's pretty legit. So just know for Raphael that you're searching School of Athens for sure. Definitely a good one for him. Okay. And then I believe we in our last one. Are we getting, I think we're either at the last one or we're second to last here for our last individual. Yep, last one. Filippo Brunelleschi is how you say his last name. Brunelleschi should be known as one of the greatest architects of this era.
Imagine this. It's 1418 in Florence, Italy. You've been challenged to build a great dome for the Santa Maria del Fiore, one of the grandest cathedrals ever built. And you have no formal architectural training. No pressure, right? For Filippo Brunelleschi, the goldsmith and clockmaker, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. He considered the challenge carefully. Then proposed a daring plan, using methods that experts don't fully understand even to this day. At the time, domes were often built as semicircles. But the town fathers required that Brunelleschi build an 8-sided dome that would be even taller and stronger. It would also have no central support system to hold it up during construction. Even worse, the dome's base was an imprecise octagon with no true center. But Brunelleschi had that covered. There would be 2 domes instead of 1, an inner and an outer shell, held together by giant brick arches and interlocking rings of stone and wood. The rings would work like hoops on a barrel, keeping the dome from expanding outward. To move heavy loads hundreds of feet up, Brunelleschi designed ingenious new machines, including an ox-driven hoist and massive lifting devices far ahead of their time. So, revolutionary design? Check. Groundbreaking engineering? Check. Can-do attitude? Check. But with no central support system, how would he actually build it? First off, the masonry would have to support itself during construction. To do this, Brunelleschi placed the bricks in an herringbone pattern, which spiraled to the top of the dome, with vertical bricks acting as bookends to hold the others in place. They laid about one roll a week, giving the mortar time to cure. At this rate, the dome grew at a snail's pace of about a foot a month. But perhaps most puzzling is how he was able to place the bricks with such precision.
Hey.
Many experts agree that he used guide ropes. One theory states that ropes ran from a flower pattern on the work platform that showed exactly where the bricks should go. Another has ropes running from the dome's center, tracing a series of cones that grew smaller as they ascended to the top. Still another suggests a different arrangement of central ropes and wooden templates. However it was done, it worked. The 8 faces of the dome met at the top precisely, just as Brunelleschi had planned. In all, it took 16 years to complete the dome. When he died in 1446, Brunelleschi left behind no sketches and no details as to exactly how he achieved his masterpiece. Today, it remains the largest masonry dome in the world, more than 500 years after it was built.
So, again, for Filippo Brunelleschi, just remember that he was considered one of the greatest architects of the era. Again, the Domio, like she was showing you in Florence, is unbelievable. The fact that he was able to put this together at the time period that he did, and the idea of what he was using architecturally is just unbelievable ahead of its time. So if you do your image search for Brunelleschi, search the Domio, and you'll see that big tower that she was just showing you. That'd be awesome. And again, of course, he's Italian. Only one person in this whole list that I gave you was not Italian, and that was Gutenberg, who was German. But every single other person, surprise, surprise, that was being kind of not being serious there, is from Italy. Okay? All right, cool. So by this point, the hope is that you have been listening to this whole thing. You've stopped it where you've needed to. You know what you needed to do. And you have got all of this filled out. This is all taken care of by this point. If it is not all the way filled out, you are behind and you are not up to speed with where you need to be. So good job getting that done. Email me or private message in Google Classroom if you have questions. Otherwise, you guys are good, and I will see you tomorrow.